Okay, I think we may be live. How's it going, folks? Chuck Holton here, and I am still in northern um, northern Israel. Just trying to make sure that I'm live here. Let's make sure that everyone can hear me. If you can hear me, let me know. Okay, we're on. All right, good. Well, thank you for being here with us. And I had a busy day. I went to Kiryat Shimona. Kiryat Shimona, if you don't know, is in the panhandle of Israel. It's about as far north as the largest city in the far north, and it is about 20, or it was about 25,000 people living there. Now, if there's a couple thousand, I'd be surprised. It's a ghost town. You imagine, I talked yesterday on my own channel about, what it must feel like to live in a place like Jish, where I am now, that's not evacuated, where people can and have evacuated from, but they don't get paid to evacuate. You know what I mean? I'll up my audio a little bit. So, since they don't get paid to evacuate, like, they don't know if they should stay or they should go. I mean, obviously, they're only, 3 or 4 miles from the border with Lebanon. Rockets and missiles come in here on an almost daily basis. And yet, if they leave, they probably will lose their livelihood. They don't get any help from the state. And where are they going to go? They're not going to get put up in a hotel like the people that are evacuated from closer to the border. They're just outside the line, And I talked about what it must be like to live like this all the time, where they're just missiles and rockets coming overhead. I mean, you can probably hear the kids yelling out in the front yard of this house next to me. There's kids out there playing in the street, and the rockets come over, and it's like watching fireworks. They get taken out by the Iron Dome system, and everybody's like, oh, good, they got those. And they just kind of keep doing their thing. They have this sort of normalcy bias that, I haven't been blown up yet, so why would I get blown up today? And it's a strange way to live. It's something that I've seen in Ukraine. I've seen many other places, and I myself sort of feel that same normalcy bias. Normally, normalcy bias is a bad thing. It's not something you want to engage in, but in this case, it's a coping mechanism, and it allows people to keep living their lives in the threat of death from the sky. And I guess if you look at it this way, it's kind of like if there's some gang violence in your city, you take what measures you can to keep from being victimized. But it's always there in the back of your mind that when you go out to the store or to church or to the bank or something, that you could be carjacked or robbed, killed in broad daylight. If you live in Chicago, I would venture to say it's more dangerous on an objective basis in Chicago than it is here in Jish, even with the daily rocket attacks. And that's partially because Hezbollah can't aim very well most of the time, but partially because they have this Iron Dome system that they can rely on to knock down most of the missiles and drones and stuff. But as I saw in Kiryat Shimona today, it certainly doesn't knock down all of them. They blew up a shopping center in Kiryat Shimona, and when I drove down into the city, my eyes are still stinging right now because it was so smoky. There was just smoke everywhere from brush fires that were started by the missiles going, hitting around the city. And there were still fires going on while I was there. So how do you keep living in a place like that? Well, for a lot of people, they don't. They have moved out, and I guess 40% of the 100,000 or so who have been evacuated don't have any plans of going back. They're just like, I can't live like that anymore. I'm going to have to live somewhere else. And so if they have the financial means, they are figuring out something else. Be kind of hard if a lot of your wealth was tied up in your house, wouldn't it? Because who's going to buy your house? I mean, there's some really sweet deals, I bet, in Kiryat Shimona right now. And you just have to put up with the weather, cloudy with a chance of missiles. So people who have the means are finding some other place to live. They're leaving for good. But what do you do if you don't have the means? I mentioned yesterday that you get put into a hotel. The people from the north here are in like 200 different hotels all around the country. So you're not all in one place. You're not there with your neighbors and your friends. You're just sort of all spread out. You've been living in a hotel room for 7 months. That doesn't sound like fun, especially if you got a few kids. Kind of hard to have any privacy. And so it's not an ideal solution by any means. The government does give them some stipend to help buy food or help offset the loss of their job, but you know how it is. I mean, you want to have something productive to do. You want to have something meaningful to do. And a lot of people get that meaningfulness out of their job. And in this case, they can't. They just can't do that. So they're stuck in a hotel. What would you do? 7 months. I mean, that's hard. That is hard. So what we're seeing up here in the north is there's still huge swaths of this country. I figured it out today with ChatGPT. The amount of land that is evacuated in northern Israel and southern Israel, around the borders of Gaza, is roughly equal to about 16 Manhattan Islands, or one city of Chicago. Not in people, because there's a lot more people packed into Chicago, but in terms of area. And so it's a massive area. It's like 300 square miles, 386 square miles, something like that. What do? You know, the enemy, Hezbollah and Hamas, are effectively denying you the use of a massive swath of territory in your own country that you, and how long are you going to let that go on? How long do you think America would let that go on? Lee Winson says, do you think the hostages are still alive? Some of them, yes. Some of them, no. I get asked that about 3 times on every live that I do. And so obviously people are very concerned about that. There's increasing pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu and the leadership to go for some kind of ceasefire agreement. There was one floated by the United States yesterday that said, and Joe Biden came out and gave his speech and was like, it's time for this war to end. Okay, you guys cut it out now. Stop fighting. I mean, wait, like, does he think he's an umpire in a little league game or something? You don't just stop a war. I mean, you can. That's what his predecessor, Barack Obama, tried to do in Afghanistan, was just declare that the war would stop. Okay, the war is going to end on this date, meaning we're going to quit fighting. Well, there is a word for that in English. It's called losing. If you stop fighting before the enemy stops fighting, you lose. That's all there is to it. And so there's no way you can declare victory by just arbitrarily and unilaterally deciding that the war is over. Okay, we're going home. We're out of here. Because the enemy then gets to declare victory. The Biden administration put forward this plan that's just got 3 phases, and they're saying, okay, first phase, you promise to stop fighting and, just sort of lay off, and then you'll get a few of your living hostages back. Phase 2, you pull out everybody from Gaza completely, and you'll get the rest of your living hostages back. And then the phase 3, pull out, help Gazans rebuild, and then they will return the dead hostages. Well, first of all, Hamas is never going to release all the hostages because that's their bargaining chip. Secondly, even Hamas is like, hey, we didn't agree to that. We want them to stop fighting and leave before we give any hostages back. Oh, and give us back all of our hostages, the Palestinian prisoners, the terrorists who are being held prisoner in Israel. And we want all those guys back. And then we'll talk about giving you some of your hostages back. Well, obviously, that's kind of a non-starter with Israel. And Netanyahu can't afford to take any deal like that. And for Joe Biden to go, oh, it's time to stop the war. Well, yeah, that's what he tried to do in Afghanistan. You see how well that worked out. I'm going to do a podcast tonight on my own Hot Zone channel right as soon as this one is over, talking about why America keeps losing wars. Why is it that the most powerful, most technologically advanced, best led, trained, equipped army on planet Earth keeps losing all the wars that it gets into? Why is that? And I'm gonna spend a whole podcast talking about that over on the Hot Zone, so you can go and if you want to go and subscribe over at the Hot Zone and hit that notification bell, then you can get notified when I go live. I'm planning to go live about the top of the next, no, I'm sorry, right now it's 12:45 on the East Coast of America, 7:45 here in Israel. And so about 8:30 my time, PM, which would be 1:30 East Coast time, I'm going to go live on my channel and talk about that. Question: Israel guys think that America and Egypt didn't want IDF going into Rafah because they knew they'd find the tunnels. They're huge. How could Egypt possibly not know about them? Of course, one tired mama, Egypt knew about the tunnels. There were a lot of people in Egypt making a lot of money on the tunnels. I mean, it's no big secret if literally truckloads are driving toward the border and then poof, disappearing and not going through the Rafah border crossing, just disappearing and showing up in inside Gaza, unloading, and then poof, reappearing in Egypt, unloaded. And yeah, there you go. Yeah, so it was no surprise to anyone. I think the Biden administration just labors under this ridiculous they have this mindset that's incredibly naive that thinks that you can stop a war just by declaring it over without actually defeating the enemy. And they don't really want to defeat the enemy because they think that we should be able to win the war without actually offending anybody. So you hear the Muslim call to prayer here going off. It'll go off again in about 30 minutes. There are, in this town I'm in called Jish, it's a Maronite Christian village, but about half the people that live here are Muslim. And they get along fine. It's amazing. You know, these are Muslim Israelis. They have a good quality of life. Most of them have very expensive side-by-sides in this town. I don't know why that's so popular here. I mean, there's a lot of trails and there's a big forest just north of us here. So I guess, you know, a lot of guys like to go tear around out in the woods or whatever, but man, they love to tear around town in those side-by-sides, and they're probably $40,000 each. So, is he done? No, he's not done. Sounds like death. I don't know. I think rap music sounds like death. This sound is kind of annoying, I guess, because they got to do it 5 times a day starting at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And so obviously, yeah, it is noise pollution. And I wonder what would happen if Israel passed an ordinance banning noise pollution. I think that probably would not go over well because this is part of their religion. And the reason that they do this is because in their worldview, anything within the sound of the Muezzin's call belongs to Islam. And so in some sense, what they're doing right this minute, right now, that song you hear, is the Muslims claiming all of this as their territory. And they are putting up more of these all the time, all around Israel. And in lots of places in the United States, these things are starting to go up. And maybe it's because we don't understand what it is that what it actually means. But I sure would not want to live in a place where this happened 5 times a day. That would be really annoying. Okay, so let's see here. Looks like we got a few people that need to go. So here in the north, we've had 19 alerts today on Shofar, on the Shofar app. Most of them had to do, 20. There's another one. Just 2 minutes ago we had one. And some of them were quite a lot of area. You see here. This is one of the more recent ones. That's Kiryat Shimona right in the middle. So zoom in on Kiryat Shimona. And so that's where I was today, right in the middle of all that. And the IDF was giving as good as it got. So it was, there were constant fighter jets overhead just pounding inside Lebanon. They were striking as far as like 40 kilometers inside Lebanon, 20 miles or so. And one other thing that happened today is that an IDF drone was shot down inside Lebanon. It's a several $1 million drone. It looks like a Reaper or something like that. And that they're the Telegram channels of the Hezbollah, pro-Hezbollah faction are celebrating, showing pieces of the drone and dancing around. And I'm sure that they'll have a monument made out of that thing pretty soon. That is fairly rare. That doesn't normally happen. It's not that Hezbollah doesn't have man pads to shoot down drones like that, but they don't use them all that often. In this case, they did and shot one down, apparently. It's being investigated by the IDF, so they haven't put out a statement one way or the other yet, I don't think, other than it went down. For their part, the IDF shoots down drones almost every day coming from the other side. And those are not several $1 million drones. They're several $1,000 drones or smaller drones. And those are, kamikaze one-way drones, not drones that are meant to loiter up there for 30 hours and then fire off a missile at somebody or something like that. Something interesting I found when I was reading about that is that the IDF has made a bad habit of shooting down its own drones. And one Marine Corps officer was giving a briefing in the last week or two and said that that the IDF shoots down about 40% of its own drones. Now, he didn't back that up with any hard facts, so I would take that with a grain of salt. But the IDF does admit to having shot down a bunch of its own drones. I don't think they're talking about the big, expensive drones are getting shot down. I think they're talking about ground-launched drones that are assisting. They see they're giving drones to the IDF troops inside Gaza, and the infantrymen can throw those drones up, send it to the other side of a building, and look on the other side of the building to see if there's any bad guys over there waiting to ambush them, things like that. But many times they'll throw that drone up and fly it around, looking at stuff, and then here goes one of the side-by-sides. Those guys just love to tear around this town, and there's no police to stop them. So they're flying the drone around, and then another group of Israeli soldiers sees a drone flying around up there, and they shoot it down because they don't know if it's friendly or foe. So maybe they need to go with a certain color scheme or something. I don't know. Let's see. I saw a question go by about am I worried about my safety? But do you worry about your safety when you travel in Muslim countries knowing that you are pro-Israel? I do worry about my safety more in Muslim countries than I do in non-Muslim countries, just because Muslims are more likely to be violent. There are lots of non-violent Muslim people. I go to Jordan regularly lately, and I've never had a problem in Jordan. The Jordanians are super nice people. They might be Muslim, but they're also Bedouin, and the Bedouin culture is very hospitable. So they are, just by and large, people on the street, merchants, people driving, whatever, in Jordan are much friendlier to me in general than people in Israel are. And I talked on my podcast last night on my channel about why I think that is and why I'm perfectly willing to give lots of grace to Israelis if they're grumpy or, not the most ebullient, effusive, in-your-face, smoochy face people that you might hope to meet, because they have to live in a place like this where death just could rain down from the sky, because there's a bunch of homicidal maniacs right over there, a couple of kilometers, that just live for the opportunity to kill you. And a lot of people in your own country feel the same way. 20% of this country is Muslim, and not, obviously, many of them are perfectly peaceful and nice, and I've met a bunch of them that are fine. But, well, let's just say you don't have a lot of Jews just randomly murdering Palestinians in the street in Jerusalem. But you do have a lot of Palestinians randomly murdering Jews in the streets of Jerusalem. So I can understand why Jews might be a little edgy. You know what I mean? And so I don't hold it against them that this is not the friendliest place I've ever been in my life. That's okay. Now, yeah, please hit the like button, folks, and subscribe if you haven't. If you have, go check and make sure you're still subscribed, because YouTube likes to unsubscribe people for no reason. And again, go look at the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton. I'll be over there here in half an hour or so talking about why America keeps losing wars, why we lose. And it's not something that's not fixable. So it's, I think, important for us to understand this as we come into election cycle. Many lost and many devoured, the prince of this world. Okay, if you're not asking a question, then please don't type in all caps. All caps should be reserved in the comments for if you're asking a question. If you're just making a comment and you're shouting, that's rude, and so please don't do that. Don't type in all caps unless it's asking a question. And it does help if you put the word question before you ask your question. Then I can see them go by and I can get to them. I mean, if you want your questions answered. So here in the north, the question is, how long can this go on? So the Biden administration is telling Netanyahu, okay, it's time to end the war, but he can't. He can't end the war, because even if they finish up in Gaza tomorrow, even if all of Hamas in Gaza lays down their weapons and says, okay, we're done, we give up, they've still got this to deal with up here. They still have 100,000 people that are not able to go home and have been out of their homes for 7 months. Not just out of their homes, out of their jobs, out of their schools, out of their church congregations and their synagogues. They can't get on with their lives until this ends. And it will not end by just declaring the war to be over. Do you think Hezbollah is going to listen to Joe Biden? Oh, well, Joe Biden says it's time for us to stop fighting, so, okay, we'll go home now. That's not going to happen. So they have to deal with this threat from the north. And you might ask, then why haven't they done it yet? Well, one thing at a time. They're focusing right now on Gaza. They're trying to get that nailed down. Do you understand, if they go hard, if they open up an offensive into Lebanon to go, kill Hezbollah, Hezbollah has tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of rockets and missiles and drones that they could, if they fired them all at once, if they fired them all, in a very short period of time, would completely overwhelm Israeli air defenses and would cause massive carnage and destruction here in northern Israel and all over Israel, because they've got missiles that can reach anywhere inside Israel. They could hit Jerusalem. They could hit Tel Aviv. They could hit Beersheba if they wanted to. So Israel is saying, let's choose our battles. They didn't have a plan when October 7th happened. The Israelis were caught flat-footed. And so they've been essentially just reacting so far to everything that's happened. Just every day, they're just reacting. And all of everything that you've seen so far is a reaction. And so they haven't implemented a plan, an actual plan where they're on the front foot. They're the ones that are acting and not reacting yet, I would submit. MR says, do you think there will be a huge war on the north too? Well, yes, I do. I think there has to be. But in speaking with some of the people that live here in Jish and getting some opinions today, I think the people here believe that Israel is going to do something, some limited operation, maybe just from the air, maybe not even going in on the ground, to try to beat back Hezbollah and reduce their capabilities to strike at northern Israel. And then they're going to go to the people that are in the hotels and go, okay, you can go home now. There's only three options here. Number one is that they never go home, and that's a pretty bad option. Number two is that they go home, and there's still a threat. And number three is that Israel does whatever is necessary to remove the threat for good, or at least for a long time, and then they can go home and get on with their lives. Number one is sort of a non-starter. Never occupying, having a 7-kilometer zone inside your country where that's just a dead zone is really a non-starter in such a small country. So that's out. Number two, going back, and when there's still a threat, that's probably the most likely outcome right now, because number three, ending the threat for good, or at least for a long time, is going to take so much effort, so much money, so much ammunition, so many soldiers, that Israel needs to bide its time. Here they come. One. More motorcycles. These guys just love their motorcycles up here. I would have done that too when I was a kid. But so Israel needs to do number three, which is clear them out for good. But if they're going to do that, they're going to bide their time, and they're going to do it at a time and place of their own choosing once they've had time to make a plan, prepare, train, raise the manpower that they need, and then they'll do it. So what the people here believe is that Israel's going to do something, kind of a half measure in the meantime, and maybe that won't be until springtime, because he said he doesn't think they're going to fight in the wintertime up here. So he's thinking, fighting in the winter here would be no fun, but maybe they do it before then, but some of the people I talked to today didn't think it was likely. I thought it might come in the spring. And then people would be able to move back in here and sort of have a semi-normal life. I mean, they were dealing with rocket attacks for a decade or more up here, and that's why every house up here has a safe room in it already. So, and there are shelters now all over the place. So they get it calmed down enough where they can move people back into their homes up here. And then Israel plots and plans and prepares and trains, raises an army, and then maybe a year from now, maybe 2 years from now, we have a whole nother war that goes into Lebanon and actually does the job right. This is what I heard from people here today, that they believe that might be the way this will go. Now, what do you think about that? I don't know. I understand that Israel, right? I mean, they have plenty of troops, but the United States, they keep getting thrown under the bus by the Biden administration. The Biden administration desperately does not want there to be any kind of war in the north like we've seen in Gaza, especially before the election. And so the Biden administration is going to put maximum pressure on Israel not to do anything until after November, at least. And that's why they think that this will probably drag on into the spring of next year. So, I don't know. What do you think about that? Now, question. Hello, sir. What's the temperature of the region? Do you feel that this is going to escalate in the region to a wider scale, a multinational war? So far, it looks like that has been studiously avoided by all sides. Syria has not made any move to get involved. Jordan certainly is not going to get involved. Saudi Arabia in the south, not going to get involved. Jordan and Saudi Arabia have been actually helping Israel fight the Houthis and everything. So they're not going to get involved. The United States, we're not going to put troops in here. Now, if Hezbollah opened up with all barrels on Israel, the United States may very well get involved from the air, sending sorties of fighter jets and bombers into southern Lebanon and, bombing targets in there. But that would be the extent of it. Nobody in the United States has the stomach to put troops on the ground anywhere for the foreseeable future. I mean, if we put them anywhere, maybe we should just put them along the southern border, but that's another podcast for another day. Verna says they just returned from Kiryat Shimona, very empty. Yeah, I was there today. It's a ghost town. There are a few vehicles, I saw a few people peeking out of windows, and so there are a few people that haven't left for whatever reason. But other than soldiers and police, I didn't see hardly anybody up there. And even I did see cars going by headed south, packed to the gills with everything out of their house. So there are people that are coming up here and getting everything out of their house and moving for good, leaving for good. Question, why don't I get notified when you go live? I put the bell icon and still no notifications when you're live. You may have notifications turned off on your phone, love. You may, be receiving the notifications from YouTube, but your phone blocks them. So you might check that, or your computer may have it turned off for that particular website or whatever. Question, can Netanyahu fire Gantz and Gallant? If he can, do you think he should? I don't know, Penny. Somebody who is Israeli that knows more about Israeli politics should answer that question for us. Hope this helped. Question, USA and West playing weak or actually weak because enemies warring towards World War. Can West win World War when time? Okay, I'm going to try to decipher your shorthand here, Hope. Is the U.S. pretending to be weak, or are they actually weak, and could they win a world war if another one started? I think that's what you're asking. And I'm just going to defer that to the podcast over on my channel, because I'm going to talk about that very topic here in about 20 minutes. Okay, so let's see. My phone has been going off all morning. Yeah, there have been a lot of alerts this morning. And so I drove down there. It's about half an hour from here to Kiryat Shimona. And it's weird because if I go to Gaza and try to drive in, get anywhere close to the border with Gaza and, show my press pass, which is supposed to give me permission to get into places like that, I get stopped. They won't let me in. 5 kilometers out, they have checkpoints, and they're very nice about it, but they're like, yeah, you can't come in by. Here, they have checkpoints too. I pull up the checkpoints, I show my card, and they go, have a nice day. They let me right through. And I can practically drive right up to the border fence if I want to. So that's kind of surprising. Maybe it's they just don't have the manpower to try to stop everybody. I don't know. Tony K says, question, think DMZs, like between North Korea, are needed? Israel thinks a DMZ is needed between them and Gaza, and they have talked about at length making a buffer zone on the Gaza side where that's like a no man's land where nobody can go, because before October 7th, Palestinians could come right up to the border fence and throw rocks at Israeli soldiers and throw Molotov cocktails and, hold rallies and all kinds of stuff. They're not going to allow that anymore. So they're going to put up some sort of buffer zone, and they're talking about like 500 meters, like pretty wide border area. Could they do that up here? It wouldn't do much good, because the real issue up here, although there have been some incursion attempts even today and yesterday, where people were trying to get across the border on foot from, oh, hi, Cat, on foot from Lebanon into Israel. But the real threat from Hezbollah is rockets. And, that's what I'm saying. Like, now they've got a 5 kilometer, that's with a 2.5, 3 mile buffer zone between the border and where people are supposed to be residing. So this town of Jish is one I like to come to because it's right on the edge of that buffer zone. So it's about as close as you can actually find a restaurant open or an Airbnb that's available or something like that. But they can't, there's tons of communities in that buffer zone, and they can't just leave them empty. They can't just abandon them forever. Israel these people have lives. And so, there are a lot of people now starting to clamor for the Israeli government to allow them to go back to their homes. And they're saying the problem is Israel, the government does not have a plan at all to deal with that, to restart the schools, to restart the public services, to get, things ramped up again. They don't have a plan for that. So Kiryat Shimona, 25,000 people gone. How do they come back if there's no garbage collection? If there's no school? Most of the services are down. Most of the businesses are closed. You drive along and there's weeds growing up through the pavement and stuff now. It just looks like a zombie apocalypse area or something. So having a demilitarized zone in the north is just not practicable. It's not feasible. I hope that answers your question. Let's see here. People are having these side discussions about Jesus over here. That's great. So Samson says Netanyahu can fire Gallant because they're from the same party, but he can't fire Benny Gantz as he's from an opposition party and joined the government with Netanyahu when the war began. There you go. Thank you, Samson. I appreciate that. I'm gonna sign off here because I'm gonna get ready for my live over on my channel. So again, if you'd like to donate to CBN, you can get a tax deduction by donating at cbn.com. And we greatly appreciate all of your donations, whether it's here on YouTube or over there, any place. That helps keep us doing our thing here. So someone asked if hostages are in Egypt and how do they get them back. There has been no news at all about hostages being in Egypt. That doesn't mean they aren't. It just means that if they are, I don't know about it, and neither does anybody else in the public. And so that's a big maybe. Could they be in Egypt? Sure. With all those tunnels that they found, sure, they could have gotten them into Egypt. They were smuggling out people that were Palestinian through those tunnels, so why not smuggle out one of the hostages or something if they want to? What was I saying? Donating to CBN. And again, if you want to follow my personal reporting, you can go to chuckholton.com and you can subscribe over there. I'm putting up a lot of videos that I can't put on YouTube because it would get us demonetized. So if I find a good video like that, or if I get a video of something that's, vertical or just wouldn't work for a live, then I will, I'll put it up on chuckholton.com and you can go there and see it. Question: what is your channel going to watch? Hope my channel is called The Hot Zone with Chuck Holton. So just search on YouTube for The Hot Zone with Chuck Holton, and you'll find it. And I'll be live there in about 14 minutes. So we're going to pray and pray for the people who are wondering when they'll get to come home. That's a tough place to be. All right? So let's pray. Lord God, we come to you right now, and we just thank you that you promise us that we are just sojourners here on this earth, and that our true citizenship is in heaven if we are followers of you. And we don't have to get too worried about losing our home here and wherever we live, because it's not our true home. We were made for a person and a place. That person is Jesus, and that place is heaven. And everything else we're just passing through. So I pray, Lord, that you would give the people who are out of their homes in the north and in the south of Israel that kind of peace, the peace that passes all understanding, that comes only from knowing your Son, Jesus. Lord, I pray that you would bring peace in Jerusalem. I pray that you would give the commanders and the leaders of this country great wisdom and foresight and discernment, so that they can see what decisions they should make and understand what the outcome would be of any course of action. Lord, I pray for the children who are just right here in this village with me. I pray that you would guard their little hearts, guard their minds. Don't allow them to be traumatized by living under the threat of rockets and drones and missiles on a daily basis. And I pray that they would be able to grow up in a place that is safe. And I pray that those people who have been driven out of their homes would be able to go home, would be able to get back into their jobs and their lives and their schools. And they would be able to live in safety. We ask these things, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, folks, thank you very much for watching. All right, I'm just checking to see if there's any other. Yeah, hit the thumbs up, please. That means a lot. It really does help. So, all right, I'm going to end the broadcast, and let's hope that it actually stays there this time. God bless you. We'll see you later.